Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dive into the story of a simple wooden chair that comes with a seriously deadly warning. If you sit in it, you will die. Yeah, we're going to uncover the legend of what might just be the world's most dangerous piece of furniture.
I mean, look at it. It just looks like a simple oak chair, right? But its story? Well, its story is linked to over 60 mysterious and sudden deaths. This is not just a piece of furniture, people. It's the center of a legend that has terrified people for centuries.
So, eventually, the chair was given to the Thirsk Museum in North Yorkshire, but it came with one very strict rule. You do not let anyone sit in it, ever. And they took that warning, very, very seriously. To stop any more tragedies, they hung the chair 5 feet up on a wall, where nobody can accidentally make that fatal mistake. All right, so how on earth does a simple wooden chair get this terrifying reputation? Well, the story starts, as these things so often do, with one very angry man. Let's go back. The year is 1702, and we meet our main character, a guy named Thomas Busby. Now, Busby was, let's just say, he wasn't a great guy. He was a notorious drunk, a thief, and he even counterfeited coins. He was running this whole criminal operation with his father-in-law, Daniel Audie, but their relationship, it was a total powder keg, just waiting for a spark.
Okay, let's dive into this. The legend says it all kicked off with one fateful and, ultimately fatal argument. And what was at the center of it all? You guessed it, Busby's favorite chair. So the story goes that Busby comes home one day and finds Audie, his father-in-law, sitting in his favorite chair. Big mistake. Audie threatens to take his daughter, who's Busby's wife, by the way, back home with him. Busby is just enraged. He waits until later that night, sneaks over to Audie's place, and bludgeons him to death with a hammer. Now, back in the 18th century, justice was, it was swift. Busby was arrested, tried, found guilty, and sentenced to hang. So, as he's standing there at the gallows, with the noose literally being slipped around his neck, you'd think he'd have some last words of repentance, right? Nope. Busby used his last breath for revenge. He shouted this chilling curse: "Death shall come swiftly to anyone who dares sit in my chair." And with that, he basically sealed its dark fate for centuries.
After Busby was executed, right outside his own inn, by the way, the place got this grim new name, the Busby Stomp Inn. And the chair, it just stayed there, a permanent fixture and, as it turns out, a waiting trap. It didn't take long for the curse to start claiming its victims.
And what followed was just this bizarre and terrifying pattern of death. You have a chimney sweep who sits in the chair and is found hanged the very next morning. During World War II, Canadian airmen from a base nearby would sit in it for a laugh, and they reportedly never returned from their bombing missions. Then, in 1968, 2 soldiers dare each other to sit in it. They die in a car crash literally minutes later. A builder sits in it in 1970 and falls from a roof to his death that afternoon. It just keeps going. Sitting in the chair was always followed by a sudden, often violent death. It's not all just old stories. In a 1973 interview with the BBC, the pub landlord at the time, a guy named Tony Earnshaw, he was terrified. He recalled what the builder's own father told him, just hours after his son sat in that chair. That was the moment that finally convinced Earnshaw the curse was absolutely real. So after a delivery man who had no idea about the curse sat in the chair while it was stored in the cellar and then died in a crash that same day, that was the last straw for Earnshaw. He'd had enough. He knew he had to get that thing out of his inn for good. So in 1978, he donated it to the Thirsk Museum.
Okay, so this seems like a pretty terrifying open and shut case for a haunted object, right? But this is where our explainer gets really, really interesting. Because when historians actually got their hands on the chair and examined it, the facts started to completely unravel the folklore.
A furniture historian took one look at the chair and delivered this absolutely stunning revelation that just blows a hole in the entire legend. Based on its construction, its style, he dated the chair not to 1702, but to the 1840s. That's more than 130 years after Busby was executed.
And the proof was in the details, specifically the spindles. See, they were machine-turned. That's a technique that just didn't exist in the 18th century. Back then, chairs were made by hand on something called a pole lathe. So here's the crucial point, the bottom line. The physical evidence proves that the chair sitting in that museum could not possibly have belonged to Thomas Busby.
So, if the chair isn't even Busby's, then what on earth explains that long string of tragic and often verified deaths? I mean, is it all just one massive, spooky coincidence? Or could something else be going on here? Well, psychologists have a really powerful explanation. It's called the nocebo effect. You've probably heard of the placebo effect, where you believe something will help you and it does. Well, this is the dark twin of that. It's when you truly believe something will harm you, and your own fear and anxiety can actually help bring about a negative result. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy of doom. So when you lay it all out, you can see how psychology, probability, and just plain coincidence could weave together to create this terrifying legend. I mean, think about it. The kind of people who would dare to sit in a supposedly cursed chair, like wartime airmen or guys accepting a dare, they're already engaged in high-risk activities, right? They're risk takers by nature. You add the psychological power of the nocebo effect to that mix, and suddenly, a series of simple, tragic accidents starts to look like an inescapable supernatural curse.
And yet, even with all these rational, scientific explanations, the story doesn't quite end there. The chilling power of this legend, it really persists. Even today, the fear surrounding the chair is potent. The museum curator promised he would never, ever let anyone sit in it, and it's a promise they have absolutely kept. Even the BBC documentary crew who came to film the chair back in the 70s, they later admitted to going to extraordinary lengths just to avoid accidentally sitting in it themselves. The fear is just that contagious, even if you're a skeptic. And that leaves us with this final, lingering thought. Okay, so the deaths might just be a coincidence. The curse might be a myth. The chair is just an old piece of furniture from the wrong century. But if they took it down from that wall, would you take the chance? Would you be willing to sit in it?